Greetings and peace, everybody. Today I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my friend Stephen Beyer from Chicago, Illinois. I've looked up to him for a very long time. I've spoken with him. Now, hearing his voice, it brings warmth to our brotherhood and our friendship, and I'm very honored to speak with him and all the great thing he's done in terms of his activism in Chicago, standing up for human rights, standing up for people, standing up against corruption, which defines the value of what a Freemason is. The one who always stands up for the right thing, puts his faith in God, helps humanity, and is a selfless individual. That's what Brother Stephen Beyer is. He's often misunderstood by many people, but ultimately, you got to take the time to sit down and understand one another and see what our roles are in this grand scheme of things in this life that we're in. So without further ado, I hand it over to Brother Stephen Beyer. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you. So I guess I was going to talk a little bit about my journey and what I've seen in America and the world, and how it's helped me to find my voice both for myself and for other people. So there was a while where I was trying to help a business serve some food to various people. And the location of this business was by Oak Park and the west side of Chicago. Now, the thing that's interesting here is the divide. And it's very, very stark because of the way the traffic goes between the rich and the poor. This is what's called the Austin Ghetto, or the west side of Chicago. And right next to it are the Frank Lloyd Wright houses of Oak Park. And it is an area that when you travel through it, you see that set in stone, there are various things that, because of the franchise local government, instead of connecting people, they're able to set it up so that the roads don't connect people. So that basically, it's designed to keep poor people from not being seen by the nice, picturesque Frank Lloyd Wright houses sometimes that are only a few blocks from where they live. And when I was trying to, there is a lot of suffering on the west side of Chicago. And in this area, I remember a situation where I was there's a lot of things that are not going right, and focusing on the positive, though, there is a lot of hope and people coming together to actually look at why there are the same problems year after year in those areas. And people of different faiths are coming together and working together to heal humanity. And that's one of the things that really makes your work such a laudable undertaking. And so when I started studying interfaith and different cultures and religion, I was a very young kid. So one of the things that's interesting about my background is I went to a Lutheran school, but I wasn't Lutheran. It was in part because well, everyone knows that they do better than public education because the private schools are very well disciplined, and St. John's Lutheran had a good reputation. And my family had a history there, so and it was interesting because my family at that point was Episcopalian. They had changed to the Anglican community. But so I had two different types of Protestantism to look at and compare from my childhood. My brother had originally been baptized Lutheran, and then I had been baptized Anglican, amusingly by a person who turned out to be a thief. And I, amusingly enough, kind of fouled up the baptism. He had to clean himself up after baptizing me. So it was apparently a slightly amusing baptism on that. But he was later found to have been essentially ripping off the church. And but that kind of created a background where I started questioning, you know, the various different communities. And, you know, back when I was a kid, there was a lot more conflict between Catholic and Protestant. The Irish versus the English made a situation where, you know, it was in the news every so often when things were happening. There were incidences, and so there were separate news networks. Like, people would side with one group or the other. And that's largely faded away over the last 30 years. But I still remember the news when I was a kid. There was a lot more tension in America, which side of that you were on. I think now just whether or not you are a theist or a agnostic is a bigger divide. And a lot of people have lost interest in that. But I recall always wanting to try and figure out if there could be peace between the groups that had historically been enemies. And I also started studying ancient myths and legends. There was a project my father had encouraged me to work on where I would study for the academic fair that I did at school, which was on how different cultures' religions affected their political system and their values. I think we may have gotten the idea from a Star Wars book where the alien general and the emperor for the Empire, Thrawn, likes to investigate artwork to study his enemy. So we took that kind of a concept, and the big conclusion I came to is Athens had a clever mascot hero, and they came up with democracy, whereas Sparta favored the idea that they were the bloodline of Hercules, and they had a more militaristic type of government. So that was sort of the example of how different attributes and names, when thought of on the divine scale, influence society, and gave me sort of a background to study things. As I grew up, I loved to study ancient texts that were being discovered. So the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Gnostic texts at Nag Hammadi interest me a lot, and put me on the study of Platonic metaphysics and various schools of early Christianity that didn't necessarily follow the same Trinitarian system that got adopted and accepted. And I guess what I found is that there's a very complicated history of division whenever there's a monotheistic community. So, for instance, there's the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, the Samaritans, and there's the Orthodox and the Catholics. There has a tendency to be a division, and often mutual excommunications happen. And so, like in the New Testament, the story of the Good Samaritan is controversial and shocking in context, because Samaritans were at the time very much sort of a rival people that sort of had a mutual excommunication for each other. And I named this tendency, when it happens sometimes, anti-syncretism, which is like, instead of when religions are able to work together, when they have a tendency to be in direct conflict. And this can be create situations with holy war and create disasters. One of the things that I found historically is that these conflicts are hijacked by governments, mercenary groups, corporations, or whatever. And there's this thing that happens with proxy war. So the people of Pakistan and Afghanistan, they're trapped between Eastern and Western empires. And both
Yes.
sides, when they're trying to cause problems, might arm a group of people and send them at the other. Something like this seems to have happened in Syria, where both like there's a situation where we ended up backing militants and other groups were backing other militants and sending them at each other.
Hmm.
And there doesn't really seem to be anything religious about it other than mascots superficially. That, like, this wasn't some great debate over values. It was a cynical use of the divisions of people to set them against each other for cheap warfare, because you had plausible deniability if you were using somebody, a volunteer. It seems like there was a lot of violence in Africa, the Middle East over the last 20 years, and we can call it proxy war when it's facilitated by, it's sort of the global community of bankers, corrupt officials allow these conflicts to happen deliberately. And I think a lot of people are trapped in this system. And my experience really wanted me to find a way past that. And it led me to study some people from Iran who were these revolutionary, heroic figures in my mind, with great they're called the Babi. And the thing that made them so interesting to me is at the time, I sort of am skipping ahead to why I found these people to be so amazing. But I'm going to be overcome a little bit by emotion just because of what time of year it is, because just recently there was this time of year, of course, we remember the grandson of the Battle of Karbala, and it just seems I find a lot of guidance from trying to make sense of that battle, of seeing people take a stand for what's right when it would be much easier to stay at home and not take a stand for what's right. And I guess that's when I saw and read about the people who took a stand in the 1800s for what I think is the cause of God against a system in Iran that was very out of touch and not. I feel like they were abusing their clerical authority in some ways to support a state that was corrupt, and that the cause of God definitely wanted to bring some light forward. So when I studied the figures of Mullah Hussein, Qudus, Kuret Ain, I got very excited and very interested in these people. And I was astounded at the lives that they led and what they did. And it reminded me of the Battle of Karbala, how the triumph of the spirit and the divine attributes seems to have won out in the end. And so when I was studying this, I found a group of people not too far from here that had a community called the Baha'is, and I ended up signing a card and joining that community.
Mm.
It I feel that many people in the Baha'i faith are trapped in the proxy war, New World Order system. And I think that goes for a lot of Western institutions at the moment. A lot of our religious institutions are facilitating this hijacking of faith to sort of be political capital for East or West. And so, like, sometimes an example of this is charity work in Sudan ended up being divisive for the civil war in Sudan. It was preparing one community or another for the conflict that one side was backed by China, the other side was backed by the West. And, you know, stuff that looked like it was charitable work may have been guided by intelligence agencies and other interests, corporate interests and such, that made money on the conflict. I feel like sometimes I could see quite a lot of that, unfortunately, where there were aspects. I remember, of course, this was happening during the conflict of Syria, where there was a lot of people cheerleading for the idea of more proxy war. The problem was with Obama was he wasn't doing enough of it, which it boggles my mind. It's like, oh, we're not blowing enough stuff up.
Well, I thank you for pointing that out, because everybody talks about Barack Obama as this great figure, but it's just like what I mentioned the other day with another podcast, that during his time, it was a nonstop barrage of drone strikes in my home country of Pakistan, where innocent funerals, weddings, different precisions and gatherings were happening. The slave trade started in Libya. They were arming FSA and all of these al-Nusra, these extreme radical beings that do not represent Islam, that were chopping heads off, decimating the Christian community, which all of it goes against Islam. All of it would happen in North Africa, in the Middle East, all the way extending to Southeast Asia, in the Afghanistan, Pakistan area. It was a barrage of so much violence and decimation of humanity that happened under his rule. So if wears a nice suit, he has a nice smile, he speaks nicely, that doesn't mean that he's not out there committing genocide. But you know, that's, if you look at history, those beings that are tied to some kind of darkness during their reign, a lot of human sacrifice happens, because that's their pact with the darkness, to be able to feed that kind of carnage into the world. So it's unfortunate, like, and I'm glad you explained all of these things, especially the Battle of Karbala, my brother, where the main emphasis of that battle teaches us that good always triumphs over evil. So it doesn't matter who's in charge, whether it's Obama, Bush, Biden, Trump. At the end, justice and goodness always wins over evil, because of individuals like you that walk this earth. And in an area like Chicago, you're needed in that area, my brother. Just a few days ago, this relates to what I'm going to tell you. I was in a coffee shop, and there was an Irish woman who looked at me, and she said, "My witchy Irish sense tells me that you're needed in this area for some reason." So I could relate to what she said to me, to you, that you're in that area of Illinois for a reason, because your light is balancing out the darkness. Sometimes we wonder, why am I stuck here? What can I do to get out of here? But sometimes you're tied to certain areas because your energy and presence is needed there, because you're going to run into the people that you need to speak to, things that you need to do, places that you need to go. So it's interesting how we're all kind of linked together in this brotherhood of light, where each area we're covering with our presence, our love, and just basically our idea of justice, knowing good always wins. No matter what you went through, Brother Stephen, look, you're still here, you're stronger, your message is being spread all over the world. And that's the beauty of all of this, that no matter who or what stands against us, who's in charge, who's not in charge, we continue our struggle. And that's the main thing, that we do win in the end.
Well, thank you. You have a great way of saying things.
Thank you, my brother. And I would like for you to continue explaining the aspect of your journey in the Baha'i faith, also what led you to Freemasonry and all of your other spiritual endeavors and the great things that you're doing in Chicago. Anything you would like to discuss, it's an open topic and platform for you.
Well, there is a lot there. Um, so when I was in the Baha'i faith, I really got to know and study something, um, the uh, the science of letters and divine names and attributes. And it really led me to a system of invocation that was more common in the Babi tradition. And I have to say that one of the things that I've learned, you say it a lot, is all praise is due to God.
Mm,
And when one sets one's mind like that, it to me, it accesses a certain blessing where things will fall into place. Where instead of me being, say, grateful necessarily to you, when I'm grateful to God for you, when I connect that to the one in the whole and am thankful to God, and I guess I've found that it sets things on a certain way. And some of the activism that I've tried to focus on locally, obviously my favorites are the environmental issues. I care a lot about river otters, and I also care about clean air. So clean water and clean air is something that I think everyone agrees on. And the North American river otter needs both. So I encourage people to get to know them. They are wonderful little creatures, and they love humans, and they love being friends, and they love to fish. And one of the odd things about an otter is I have a friend otter named Benny at the local zoo, and they want to share sometimes when they're happy. And I remember one time he was eating a fish and he looked at me through the glass and he tried to he wanted to share the fish with me. And it's something that he got to know me really well. And it may sound very silly, but I have found that sometimes the oddest prayers work and are real. And I prayed for Benny and Charlotte, which are two otters that I care a lot about. And they were able, despite being rather old, to have another otter. And I'm going to definitely give a mention of Pascal the otter, who and the reason why I care so much about animals is I have definitely found that when you're on a blessed path with the spirit of God, with light, that one of the things that you will see is animals seem to be in tune with that. And I definitely notice when I see you and you talk about the birds, there's just a piece there. So some of the local activism that has me rather worried, just what's happening at local schools with military recruitment
mm,
and with how Turning Point USA is trying to polarize the classroom. We'll see how that turns out. That's coming up as a local issue. And there was an individual who really seems to have been a white power person who tried to start a club at our local high school. And most people in the community have rejected him, but it's odd how he found a national platform. So I'm
mm.
not gonna use that individual's name, but everyone around here definitely knows what's going on with that, and it's a shame what's happening.
Mm.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, man, it is unbearably hot and humid over here. It is Chicago, and
Well, it's, before you collect your thoughts, it's very interesting that you mention these things because in the Holy Quran, Surah 2, verse 62, it tells us, Brother Stephen, that doesn't matter if you're a Jew, Christian, Muslim, Sabian, as long as you believe in God and do the right thing, then on the day of judgment, you and yours shall have not any grief, that everything will be provided to you. Same thing in Surah 49, where it tells you that mankind, that the believers are but one brotherhood. So the aspect of everyone being on the level and being one brotherhood is not only demonstrated in Islam, which comes before a lot of these fraternal groups, and it's later demonstrated in Freemasonry, a lot of the Sufi traditions which kind of carried over. So it's important that this energy of justice and the synchronicity and the intent behind your prayer. So no matter what faith you follow, as long as there's intent behind your prayer and what you do, then God hears you. God hears your heart. It's like in Sufism, they'll give you different zikrs to do, different chants and incantations, but then there will come a moment where the sheikh or your guide or the leader of the group will instruct you that you can make your own zikr. So if you have your own prayer, which is basically your own, then you use that with the intent and the synchronicity and the positive energy behind that to connect with the creator because he's all hearing, all knowing, and it just works. So it's about your intent, and that's what I do. When I sit at the park, I feed the birds. I realize that everything is an extension of that creator, where in Islam they tell us that Allah is the only reality. So it's basically telling us that it's this perfect being trying to understand itself, through all of the beings and things that exist here. So if you're taking care of your fellow man, you're taking care of God. You're taking care of the environment, you're taking care of God. You're taking care of the otters, birds, you're taking care of God. It's like what Rumi says, that you have a mineral that goes to a plant, plant goes to animal, animal goes to man, man goes to angel, and angel goes back to God. And it's like in Islam, when someone passes away, we say that to God we belong and to him we shall return. Because everything else is an illusion. This life is a test. It even says that in Surah 5 that the life of this world is nothing but a game and a deception, but only if they knew. So this is a spiritual school that we're in to see the aspect of good triumphing over evil and this chess game that's being played between the light and the darkness, with even the darkness knows that light wins. They're just trying to see how much they can get away with before they get stopped. Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, the Middle East, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, wherever there's suffering, wherever there's bad, malevolent characters profiteering off of human suffering, division, and chaos, we know that souls like us, Brother Stephen, yourself, myself, and anyone that comes from the light, we will win in the end. And that's why I'm very happy that we encountered each other because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also says that all your companions, friends, people that you will come across has already been predestined before you even manifest into this life. So all of our companions and friends and brothers, we're all guiding each other home. We're all walking each other home in this short time of owing love and light to one another. And ultimately, the story ends with our victory over evil. So I thank you for the things that you're doing in Chicago, and please continue with anything you would like to discuss.
Well, I wanted to also mention how Freemasonry has created, I think, an important platform for people of different faiths and backgrounds to come together and be brothers. And
Yes.
that's one of the things that definitely drew me to it. And I learned a lot of things that I did not expect historically that also tie into. So, for an example, I had known that the Alamo involved a bunch of Freemasons, at least on the side. But what I didn't know is that many of the people in Mexico were also Freemasons, that Santa Anna was a Mason, and that actually, what's his name, Bolivar, that they say in Venezuela, was also a, so that many of the nations that were founded here, not just America, had Freemasonic leaders. And it was interesting how this created a platform for people to create democracy here in the New World. And in some ways, there were conflicts, but over time, brotherhood has hopefully continues to win out. And I often though see, I don't know, in America, it is becoming very polarized and very brutal sometimes when one is seeing people who profit or gain advantage or power or influence from conflict or division. We see a lot of this in politics where people are trying to create conflict between different communities as opposed to bringing them together. And I definitely hope for Freemasonry to be working to bring people together. And definitely this country needs it, particularly in a time when we're seeing ongoing refugee crises, and those are only going to be getting larger, it seems, right now. And we're going to be seeing a lot of people who are going to be using politics and religion to try and get people motivated to do violent acts. And we want to see the world be healed, and we want to see so this type of thinking is what of, in part, led me to have some problems and some questioning of the Baha'i Covenant. So when I talk about the Baha'i Covenant in the New World Order system, each leader of the Baha'i faith had a brother or family member that he ended up excommunicating. And this seems to be the center of division when this happens. So Baha'u'llah's brother, Subiya Azal or Mirza Yahya, they consider him like a covenant breaker. And then Abdul Baha's brothers, all of them, he excommunicated, even though that they had been given titles in the will, and they had their own community. And then Shoghi Effendi, all of his relatives, he also excommunicated. And then the next generation, there was nobody left to excommunicate because the family had excommunicated each other. So it went to committees, and then the Committee of France excommunicated and then it got to two committees. So to me, this couldn't be a path to unity. And the farther I went back, the farther it seemed like the one that was, excommunicated was the one that had the point. So Abdul Baha's brother actually seems like a pretty noble guy, and a lot of the things that he stood for seemed. And then when I went one generation before and I looked at Baha'u'llah's brother, I couldn't believe the way that the feud had developed, and it was very sad and very tragic. I encourage all members of the faith to study the covenant breakers and see if they're happy with how the covenant turned out. Because I definitely, I'd rather be considered a covenant breaker than be on the side of excommunicating all of these brothers and these individuals. Many of them seem to have very noble attributes, and the cause of the conflict was them trying to do what was right. And that's why I have to question the New World Order system and the Baha'i faith, and would ask people to study that. And I think many people are drawn to the Baha'i faith because they want peace, they want unity, they want good things. Like, it is something that has great marketing behind it. I think that they have a really nice sounding message, and I wish they lived up to a little bit more of it. And I think they can live up to more of it, and I have hope for a lot of them. And I think when they really study what happened to the covenant breakers, they're going to want to get past the excommunication, and because they're not even allowed to study what the covenant breakers in their own words. They're not supposed to look at anything they say or write. Which right there, that should ring alarm bells. When someone tells you that you can't even read or write what someone else says when it's in their own defense, and is telling it, I understand disassociating yourself from someone who's a problem, but I think when one looks at the whole picture, one will see that this excommunicating of brothers is a sign that there is something that may be problematic. So, but yeah, as I have to say, I think many people in the Baha'i faith have great hearts, want peace, want unity, and don't know the whole story about the why so many people are excommunicated and why there were so many feuds between brothers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, see, when those things happen, there's always a system of control, a tight-knit control. That means there's no true freedom in any way, shape, or form when that kind of control is exerted over its members, right? And you just got to look at it this way. God or the divinity, in whichever way you follow it, whether it's through the Abrahamic faiths, the Native American traditions, the whatever traditions that's helping you become a better human being, helping you increase light in your life around your family, helping you become just better in all that you do, think, do, your actions, your knowledge, your presence, whatever path that there is for you that helps you, you follow it to your heart's content, as Surah 2, verse 62 supports that. But at the same time, anything that's kind of putting that limitation on you or exerting a form of ego and control, and you know something's not right, why is there like a council that decides everything while you could just follow the faith and profess to follow the faith? So there seems like a system of control, like in terms of money, control, power, people with influence, mixing in the aspect of the East and West. You're trying to create this global order. So you're right. It's something that does seem off, and those that have discernment, you have your free will to look into it and always listen to your heart, because that's in the Islamic sense, God is always in your heart, as it says in Surah 50, that we are closer to mankind than his jugular vein. So always look close to your heart and trust your gut instinct, not just in what myself and brother Stephen are talking about, but any situation in your life. Trust me, the alarm bells will go off in your heart, and you won't get satisfied and find peace until you address the issue. And usually you will get that what the spiritual community calls a download from the divine, where you will get info on how to do it, and you will just know. You will know how to deal with whatever situation you're facing. So please continue. Thank you.
Well, I as to activism that I've been doing, I want to encourage. I don't know. The current situation I think is urgent for people locally is definitely the polarization of schools and it becoming a political battleground instead of it serving the interest of the youth. Youth protection is, I think, an incredible mandate for the community. And when the schools are becoming polarized battlegrounds for military recruitment and politicalization, it's not protecting the youth, and it's a huge problem, I think. And right now, it's in America. That's one of the most pressing things that we are seeing. We are also seeing really unfortunate racial and ethnic conflict right now in Chicago. I think a lot of people who come from the suburbs don't see how some people are trapped in the poorer areas. They think that somehow they deserve to be poor. I don't know how that paradigm has become okay, but the situation in Chicago, as I said, that it was sort of set in stone earlier. One of the things that made it very apparent for me is when I saw the train station next to the hospital in the ghetto was actually closed. So, like, there's an industrial area right next to the hospital on the other side of the train station. As that declined, they closed the train station next to, it cuts off traffic in an interesting way, and it's choking these communities. And I really hope that people are working together to take care of each other during this pandemic, working together to share food and create networks to take care of each other in case of an emergency. Because what we're seeing is well, there's definitely some problems in this state, in this town, in this nation, and it's going to take people to seriously look at them and want to solve them, and not just try to score political points and use them for superficial kind of that use of religion where it's more of a mascot than. And to me, this is a form of idolatry. People make an association, it separates. I think of a lot of times, I've seen it very sad where one community or another refuses to work with each other. And I definitely want to see more peace prevailing in this area. But
I know. I'm glad you mentioned that, because here in the city of Philadelphia, where I'm at, last 2 years they have kind of surpassed Chicago and New York in terms of the gun violence. And the suburban neighborhood where I'm at currently, there's a local high school here, and before they had a problem with military recruiters, like you said. And what happened was enough parents started showing up at the school board meetings and said, we want these military recruiters to stop coming to these schools, stop setting up their tables with the pamphlets and handing out pens and shirts and keychains during lunchtime and all that stuff. And it stopped. It stopped. They don't show up to the high school anymore because enough parents got their voices heard. They came together and they went to the school board meetings and told them that they're not just coming here to use our kids as cannon fodder for their industries. And now what they do is they have a career center in the library. So if anybody personally requests out of their own free will, then that's when they can help you make contact. But other than that, they're not allowed to come to the school. There's no pamphlets or no nothing. So that's only for those who, with their own free will, even though there's no presence at the high school. That's the only way that a lot of these kids these days are joining. But it just goes to show you that there is a power behind the unity of the community. So if the community was able to come together and stop these guys from showing up at the high schools, then what can they do if they continue to stick together and address the changes and social stuff in their neighborhoods, like the drugs, the gun violence, and who's doing what, who's causing the problems, and who's coming together to actually uphold justice. And we have too many people that live in fear, that kind of just worry about their own self, clout chasing. It's very few you find honorable individuals like yourself who are selfless, who put others before their own self. And a lot of these inner cities, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, they're all suffering all across this nation, all across this world, major metro cities. It's the same pattern. And I'm somebody that has lived in both East and West, and both sides are suffering their own corruption in many ways. And you do have the difference in culture, I guess, in terms of how people are treated or the aspect of discipline. But at the same time, human greed and human corruption, my brother, and the human perversion of those that maintain power and control over their populaces, that's a global problem, which goes beyond Chicago and Philadelphia. And I hope that people like us, not just in this country, but all over the world, continue to stand up for what's right. It's like the Battle of Karbala. Good always wins.
Well, I don't know what I can add to that. Thank you, or thank God for you.
Likewise, my brother, and please continue anything you would like to share with humanity, the world, about your background, who you are, who you came to be. And I want people to know who you are and what message you want to give to humanity.
Well, I guess I have to say, let's see who I am. I
Well,
uh,
there's a Sufi concept. I'll help you with this. So in the Sufi concept, they tell you that the angel of death visits you 5 times a day in accordance to the 5 daily prayers. And each time he will ask Allah or God that can I take his soul? And each time God will say no, only when I tell you to, when his time is up. So there was a time where a rich businessman, it was his time to be collected, and the angel came and collected him, and he said, what about my wife, my kids, all my businesses, my money, my bank accounts? And he said, no, you can't take any of that with you. You can only take the good that you did for yourself, for others, and that's it. And the man started crying that I spent all my life cheating others, throwing people under the bus, trying to get over on others, at the end just to walk away with nothing. The same way I came out of the womb with nothing, same way I'm going to go back, but only my spiritual deeds, which will be my real spiritual wealth. And in that regard, my brother, you are a billionaire and trillionaire, which goes to my question. If today was your last day on earth, what message would you give to the people that love you, that depend on you, your family, the city of Chicago, Philadelphia, the world, just humanity in general? What message would you give if today was your last day on earth?
I would say that I would start um, that the foundation I believe is hospitality. That the other things build off of. So to me, it's sort of, and I'll use sort of a Masonic builder's metaphor that there's one um, story after another, but the foundation I think that really starts it off is hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
That once the concept of taking care of a guest is established in faith, that people build to brotherhood and one family. And I remember there was one day where it was, I'd been an acolyte, it was Easter, and a person called me up and he asked a favor. I didn't really want to do it, but I felt like, okay, somebody's asking me to do something, so I'm going to go do it. And it turned out that that night um, there was kidnapping and gunmen, and we were attacked. And I could have surrendered right away, but I had a guest, so I felt like I had to give him a chance to flee from my vehicle. It turns out that the entire thing was an abduction and a setup for money. Person had only called me up, unfortunately, so that I would be in that situation. It was the experience of being captured, and it definitely gave me a perspective of what it's like when people are without power and don't know what to do for help. where they don't have something to call on. And luckily, the situation didn't last that long, and I was safe. Unfortunately, that individual who captured me went on to commit murder. I helped. I did my best, and they were able to bring them to justice. But I from that experience, I have definitely learned that things do end up working out in a way. The person who actually set me up changed his life and ended up doing ministry for prisoners. And, the other half of that story is how the one person didn't end up being a murderer, and how the person who betrayed me and set me up like that for no real reason other than he was under the influence of a psychopathic killer, he ended up changing his life, starting a family, doing ministry, changing people's lives. And I've tried to follow that, do that example. And I remember my friend Robert English, who was murdered last year. He also was one of those people who had seen a lot of problems that were going in the world, and was used by both media and government because of the situation with violence. But I really know that he had a charitable heart. He wanted to feed people. He wanted to take care of people. When I was homeless, he was one of the people who gave me food. He did it in a way where I didn't have to beg. He figured he pretended he didn't need something. This is extra. And it was funny how that little bit of hospitality showed his true side. When he was killed, it was just a huge loss for me. That such a kind, charitable person from such a violent background. I had really hoped there would be a happy ending for him, and there is, because he started a family shortly before he died. But it's just very sad, some of the things that have happened and that we've seen in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Robert's death will probably be the one that we'll miss him. He was a good man.
We call these people shaheed, meaning that he will always be alive. And when your life is over, Brother Stephen, when you go to the gates of heaven, your friend will be there. And that's the beauty of the aspect of the shaheed, the one who lives forever. That's why the Islamic concept of embracing death is always there, and they welcome it with open arms, because they know when they are in living a life of selflessness, helping others, putting others before their own self, and they die in that line of work, or they die in that path or intention, then their soul is immortal. His soul will always be around you, those that he loved, people that loved him. And when the aspect of meeting on the other side comes, he will be there. So we're always connected to each other, and he teaches us the aspect of zakat, charity, to help others, to feed others, to shelter others if it's within our capability to do so. And we can learn a lesson from our brother who's no longer here. But at the same time, we cherish his memory, that God rest his soul in peace. and then people will hear about this story, and his memory will be alive forever because his ideas and the mission that you shared, the things that he stood up for, they will be alive forever. And that's the beauty of what God teaches us, that Almighty God turns sinners into saints and saints into sinners overnight. So always keep faith, always pray for those that need to be prayed for. And he does work miracles. And that's why even in our brotherhood, we're always taught to do the right thing and trust God, no matter where our life takes us, through the ups and downs, through distant lands, and wherever. Always trust that the divine is looking out for you, that the good wins, and just know that things do kind of fall in place on their own. What goes around comes around. If you're doing good, good will come back to you. If you're doing bad, then bad comes back to you. It's always about standing up for the right thing. So we cherish your friend and his memory, and thank you for sharing those moments with us.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate this chance to get to know you.
Oh, thank you, my brother. Do you have any questions for me, or is there anything you would like to share with anybody?
Is there going to be any more videos with you and Wahid Azal?
Yes, we have, so far we did 4 parts, and all 4 have been getting such great responses, and I'm glad to have encountered Sheikh Wahid Azal on this path. And I'm grateful for him, his love and his brotherhood and his mentorship that he has been giving me in many ways in terms of my own path. So I'm looking forward to building with him. So we did part 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to do 4 down the road. It'll just be like these conversations that are building, which it's important for people to hear his perspective. Somebody himself who's been spiritually persecuted in many ways. So I'm grateful that that's going to continue to happen.
Well, that sounds nice. Good to hear that. That really makes, I look forward to that particularly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we should, well, I'm grateful for this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Stephen, and thank you everyone who joined us this evening. Thank you. Please keep me in your prayers. Please keep our brother Stephen in Chicago in your prayers. Keep all of humanity in your prayers. We are in a pivotal time, not just in our respective areas or in this country, but all over the world. There's a spiritual change that's taking place, and people are kind of seeing through the veil of deception that many, the Eastern and Western powers who have like kind of used their peoples as proxies for control or for division and chaos, people are seeing through that now. And there will come a time where even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that all humanity has to become one ummah, and ummah means one community. Doesn't matter what your race or religion is. As long as you stand up for the right thing, you are part of that ummah no matter what. And that's the beauty, that we need to stick together. We can't let any fear-based mind control programs, no matter which side it comes from, tell us to hate one another or fear one another. This life is too short. Too short. Just love each other, do the right thing, stand up for the justice, and you will get that true wealth when the time of accountability comes. And always travel light with a light heart, light soul, and things do work out. So let's keep smiling, keep the faith, and keep the light shining in whichever areas you're dispersed in. You're there for a reason. Just like that Irish woman told me at the coffee shop, that her senses were telling me that I'm tied to this area for a reason. So sometimes we think, man, I want to get out of here. I'm stuck in this area. Well, think about it. You're there for a reason. You're always where you're meant to be, things that you're meant to be doing, places that you're meant to be like going to. It's like a video game. You find the right person at the right time, at the right place. You find the right item to open the door. So that's how our life is. So cherish it, enjoy it, and love it, and be good to yourself and others, especially these next 8 to 10 years. I cannot stress that enough. Choose love and not fear. Thank you all, and good night.